What were you saying?
What was I saying? We were
Miss
talking
Brookelen.
about Brookelen and the spelling and the name.
Because you go Brookelen, right?
That's correct.
Brookelen.
But spelled like the borough, like Brooklyn Bridge.
I thought the borough was spelled with the Y.
It is, but it's pronounced like that.
Oh,
Yes.
gotcha.
Yes.
Wait, so you're not from New York, but you moved to New York, right?
I have had a lot of experiences in New York, but I'm from the DC area.
Gotcha.
I had a good friend that went to school there and spent some time there. And yeah, I've made some music there, but ultimately came to LA after Virginia. But yeah, Brookelen, it was always my nickname, which is funny because I feel like people with a one syllable name, they're like, how can we make this
Longer,
more complicated,
extravagant? Yeah.
And so my closest friends in high school called me Brookelen. And then when I was putting out music for the first time in 2023, just thinking of a name, and I wanted it to kind of encapsulate like the music but not be just my name. And my mom, her name before she got married was Eleanor Lee McKnight, and when she got married, McKnight, so it's my maiden name.
That's a beautiful name.
I know, we're
Eleanor
Scottish.
McKnight?
Yes, and then she had to drop Eleanor though because
Why?
she got married and took my dad's last name, so it was Lee McKnight Tannehill, and the Eleanor was gone. So when I was thinking about the spelling and wanting to just do something different, that's where the ELEN came from.
I love
It's
Eleanor.
Brooklyn. I know.
Yeah.
So paying homage to my mom, and like, you know, my parents are split, so it's very much I don't know, I feel like a lot of this music is for me and her, and kind of for like our relationship and healing and stuff, and that's where it kind of stemmed from, that name.
Yeah. That's really sweet. I'm sure we'll talk about it more, but I was when I first got into your stuff and kind of scrolled through your discography, it was super like surprising that under your name you only had music out for like 2 years, and I was like, this just does not add up. And then going back and like, you know, kind of retracing all the steps and figuring out that you've been in this for like a super long time prior to like putting your own stuff out. Was that an intimidating step, going from like the setting of not only like being in other projects but also like being in bands, where like when you're in a band, like there are 4 other people there that can like, you know, not hide behind, but they're taking a bit of the fall too. So it's like going from that and transitioning into a period where you're like, you know, doing a lot of solo stuff. Has that been intimidating? Like, does it feel different on stage, kind of like being the sole face of a project?
I think all I wanted to do was be in a band for a long time, and
Me
then
too.
you know, and you know, trying to figure out how to do that, and then ultimately just having so much creative energy and inspiration and just like willpower. I think that's how my solo project kind of came out and came together, because I had so much music I wanted to put time into, and maybe would want to bring it to a band. And I think ultimately that's just how it came out. Like I was having kind of bands go and start formulating, but ultimately I was like, all right, nobody's wanting to play the shows or like record at the rate I wanted to. And so I just started the solo project, and finally 2025 I've got a official full band for that solo project too, which is awesome. And that's kind of changing it too, because everything that I've recorded up until now has basically been written by me, and then you know, recorded with a producer, different producers. I work a lot with Pierce on this new EP that's coming out that I'm really excited about. But yeah,
I feel like there's something to be said about that, like for newer artists, like the idea of like not letting anybody around you or like a lack of resources like restrict how much you want to create.
Absolutely.
I think there's something really, really intentional and special about that. I think you need to at all costs protect your ability to have output, like in any way, shape, or form. Right? It's like, you know, if you can't find a band, just figure out how to produce. If you can't figure out how to produce, like, you know, just become more of an instrumentalist. Like, just figure out a way to always be doing something and always be moving. I think a lot of people get caught up in the logistics. They get caught up in the, well, you know, like, I can't find a producer, I can't pay for studio time, I can't find people to play with me live, I can't get shows.
Just, like, mental blocks. And I mean, the reality of the industry, like, it is really hard to tour with a band right now. It's hard to
very expensive
compensate, you know, players that deserve to be paid well and have all of that talent, but it's ultimately, that's why I think there are more solo and divisionary kind of things popping up, but also, like, beneficially it is empowering, like, and to have that self-autonomy and to be able to, you know, write and release stuff. And I definitely think I've had those mental hurdles for a long time where I'm like, I can't afford to be a musician. I felt that way for a long time, and then I discovered the power of, like, DIY music, and kind of changed my life, and, you know, allowed me to break away from all of those restraints. Like, I had resisted, like, putting music out for a long time and stuff.
And it gets so easy to, like, let those roadblocks become, like, all encompassing in your brain. Like, they can feel so big sometimes, but it's like everything, like, absolutely everything is overcomable. And even if you find a half-assed solution, that's a lot better than not having any solutions at all.
Exactly.
You know,
run with it.
Yeah, it gets easy to think, let that cloud your judgment. So before you started putting out music under just Brookelen, playing all those bands growing up, were those all based out of DC? And then tell me about the trajectory from, like, project to project. I know you've played in, like, a million different things and done a ton of different stuff.
I've got a lot of stuff coming up and, like, formulating right now, but I think I got a lot of my roots I grew up playing violin, so that was my first instrument, and playing in an orchestra and played a little bit. And then just
joined a punk band.
Yeah, exactly. Emo ass band that we're doing now. But I'm really excited about, like, the new projects that I've got going on. I just put out an EP with some friends called Lower Merion. And Ryan Pauly kind of spearheaded that and got us all together. And when he shared the music with us, I was like, I would love to be involved with this. And he produced Adriana McCassin's album last year, which is, like, my favorite album of 2024. It's very magical and special. Incredible. And
it should be massive. Like, it should be huge.
It will be. Sometimes it takes time to catch 100%. Up with the culture, and that's how it goes. But, you know, I was just wanting to record with him so badly, and this setting I feel like especially works with just, like, where I am in life and not really being able to fund a record at this moment, like a solo one in that space, and collaborating in a different way, which is really exciting. And so
how did you get to a place where you were meeting a bunch of these, like, musical people in this community? Because, like, it's interesting, like, looking into a lot of the bands that you were playing with, like, I consider myself, like, very well versed in, like, a lot of, like, LA music, and, like, I didn't know, like, of most of the bands you were playing with.
What's going on?
and they're all, like, big, like, well, not all, but, like, there's a lot of bands that are, like, bigger that you and some of your other projects have played with, but it's so weird to, like, look at LA music at large, like, from the perspective of the internet, because it's just, like, there's so many different, like, pockets and shit. But, like, when did you move out here, and how did you kind of begin to grow, like, a musical community?
It's been 3 years in, like, a day or two, which is kind of crazy.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. 3 full years in LA. And I think we were mentioning off camera, but I originally, you know, I've always been a singer-songwriter and always liked playing, but I didn't really feel like I could make, you know, a living off of music or whatever, or just like that. It was a reality for me to pursue music full time. And so I came out here very much like, I'm going to work in music and then maybe play some shows, put out my stuff. And then it kind of happened in tandem where I started just connecting in the DIY scene and kind of interested in working in music and meeting a lot of people through that. And then just being like a prolific show goer. Like I just love music. If I could go to a show every night or play a show every night, I would. And, you know, I think that's how I've played a lot of shows, just meeting people at shows and just being real. And like, I really loved that. Or, you know, being intentional about what's, you know, stood out to me in a set and stepping outside and be like, hey, what's up? That was a sick sick set. Cool. I know we've all been kind of connected through Make Out Music, and you've had like Jeff and Tim on here, but I met Jeff like when I first came out here, and
those guys are my goats.
Yeah, they're great.
Them.
They're awesome. And Steph, who also runs Make Out Music,
she's the best.
My roomie and bestie, and I love her. And they've all helped me like meet so many people, but. He was very, he kind of opened the door where I met Pierce and Fletcher of Lonely Pirate Committee, and then they became some of my best friends, and Pierce and I started dating, and we waited to like work on my solo music together until we had really, I feel like connected outside of that, because I was very much like, okay, I know that you produce, but also like our connection was very undeniable, and I was like, how am I gonna make this work? And we're still figuring it out. But it's been good, but that's how like we started a project together and put out an EP. We've got one more for We Shrunk coming out at some point. And like I met Jacob Deloitte LZ. I met him at a Make Out Music show in line, and we were talking, and he's like, yeah, I'm trying to play bass more. I go, that's so crazy, I need a bassist. Like I need a bassist. And he's like, okay. And then he goes and plays with Scalene, and it's like this really cool like set. I was not expecting like this hyper pop set, and he's playing like acoustic guitar with her. And
the shit he plays for Estelle is so funny. It's like it's like she has like a whole hyperpop thing, and then Jacob's just playing like folk guitar.
It was really cool, and that was my first experience with him.
Have you ever heard their duo? What would you call it? Country hyperpop? I don't know. They have this duo project called Florida the Man.
I've heard about it.
Oh, it's a legendary.
No, I think that's so great. And so Jacob was playing bass in We Shrunk. Like that was how that kind of group started.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, and then became friends with him, and now he's killing it with the solo music, super group music of like him and Will and Aaron and Pierce occasionally playing pedal steel.
Goats, bro.
I know.
It's so cool to watch like the way that circles kind of intertwine with each other, and then people begin to grow. That's like so like that to me within music, I think is one of the most inspiring things. Like just watching kind of like the way that people go from like, oh, like this person was part of my community, and then I met them in this show, and then they met this other person in this show, and they became friends. I think that is like really the benefit that LA has over a lot of cities in terms of musicianship and stuff. I'm not sure if you felt this way in New York, but like I've never been to another city where like it's almost like pure mass is like the only way to describe it, where it's like there's so much excess, and like with that comes some bad things, of course, but like there being so much excess in the music space, I think just allows you to like mass meet people in like this really cool way, and then you have to like dwindle down the ones that you really feel like you connect with. But
and when I first moved here, I think I was lost and living in a different space and kind of not finding that group, and I think that that's a misconception about LA. A lot of times it's like there's only these certain types of people or this certain type of scene, but there are lots of scenes. There are music or otherwise art, and even just location based. I mean, the city's so big, and the East Side is definitely I feel like I've really found a community and kind of different pockets, because I am in this singer-songwriter folk thing, and then also this emo rock shoegaze thing, and then like I have a lot of friends doing indie pop that I love, and I also see a lot of merit in that music as well. So it's fun because I don't get to choose, and I just get to play and listen and be around all of it. And I think that that's where like I do have a passion for A&R as well, and just music discovery, and that's always been part of me. And even just everyone that you've had on this podcast recently is so awesome.
Thank you.
Like I think you guys maybe had Hollis on here before, but Hollis, Adriana, like Allie, those are some of my favorite like up and coming
they're all so
female
good.
Singer-songwriters, just songwriters period. And I think it's really special to be part of this and this new music wave that's coming together.
I totally relate to what you were saying about kind of like I've always found that to be one of the coolest things about like doing this, is that like I've never had to be in like like uniformly within one certain subsection of music.
Yeah.
It's like allowed me the freedom to like be within so many different pockets and like dive into so many new things and like experience stuff. Like it's so cool. Like I always think, I'm like, how could Above the Bridge ever be like a folk or a rap or a rock thing? I was like, it never could be. Like I would hate it. And I think there are like definitely certain business advantages. Maybe it's like aligning yourself with a very specific niche and niching down or whatever. But I don't know. There's so much to me, especially here,
and
like,
especially just like 2025. What is genre? There's so much influence being pulled. Like even a lot of the artists we've referenced. Like there's so many cross like references and inspirations, and that's what I also think is really refreshing about this scene. It's like new music that's exciting. I mean, there's a lot of I think, you know, with like the shoegaze revival and this sort of conversation, it's like it's really refreshing when music sounds different and when it sounds like unfamiliar. And
I totally agree.
I don't know, that's definitely what I think I'm vying for at this current moment in like my creative process. Having
so many different like projects and all of them sounding so differently, and like you said, genre being this weird like fickle thing, right? When you're creating, like, how present is it in your mind? I would imagine like you could make pretty much anything and you would have some pocket to throw it into, because you have so many, you know, methods of releasing music, so many different projects you're within. When you're thinking about something and you're writing, do you know exactly like what project it's for right as you're writing it, or does it take time? Like, will you sit down and be like, oh, I'm writing like a We Shrunk song right now?
It's interesting because I think it all depends on like the room I'm in and the people I'm with, and usually when and you know, it's ever evolving, but oftentimes when I sit down with a guitar, I'm writing music for my solo project for the Brookelen music, and when Pierce and I are together, we'll usually be very intentional about like, hey, let's write a song together for We Shrunk right now. And I don't normally bring stuff into like a duo project because I feel like it's very much the whole point of it is the creating together. But because we also work together in a capacity where he'll produce my solo music, it's like I come in with a song done, and you know, and then we work and build on that. But I think I'm a lot newer on playing bass, and so a lot of that has just been like, you know, listening to the songwriter and the guitarist come in with something and then trying to adapt in some way to those spaces. But like with Garb, which we also put a project out, this was the first project that I like played, you know, on, and so
it's really good.
Thanks.
I had not heard it until like yesterday, because I didn't know you were in Garb, but like I didn't know about it.
Pretty low key.
Really sick. It's really cool.
Carrick and Nick, those are the other three members. They're great, and they're all from like Coachella Valley, and they've been playing together for a really long time.
Gotcha.
And their former bassist Lindsay like moved to New York a year and a half ago maybe, and I was just a fan. Like I would just go to Garb shows, and I became friends with them randomly when I first moved to LA. Like the first month I moved here, I met Carrick and Nick because I was trying to go to Coachella, and I bought a ticket off of them, and from a friend from high school who was dating one of them at the time, random. And then now I'm like playing with them, and basically Carrick was like, hey, would you want to play bass for the band? And I bought a bass a year before and was like, I'm gonna start learning, you know, how to play. And then because guitar and violin have kind of always been like my primaries in singing, you know? And then he's like, no, he's like, you play guitar, you can play bass, and really encouraged me to like play for the band.
That's cool.
And now all these other things have happened and opened up where I can play. Which is really cool.
There's something really cool about being a different piece within all the projects as well. Like I would imagine it really gives you like perspective when you approach your own solo stuff, where it's like, you know, if somebody plays in one project and within that one project they're the drummer, they might only have the drummer's perspective on like other projects they're in the future. But it's like you can kind of approach all these things from like the instrumentalist background, the songwriter, the face, the performer, you know, a band member. Like there's so many different aspects of things that you're learning. Do you think you want to maintain like this quantity of projects forever? Does it ever get unsustainable and hard to manage?
Well, I'm unemployed at the moment, which is a big reason why I've been able to balance and try and experiment. I think I'm just in an experimenting mode where I do get a lot of value from just playing and not being at the focal point, it not being my songs that are like from the bottom of my deepest, darkest, like, you know, hidden spot in my body, and I love that. I do think I think time and, you know, the next 6 months will kind of shape out. I guess the primary goal is like Brookelen, my solo project, will always be a focus and will always be there for me, and is the thing that I think I'm most connected to, just like inevitably.
Of course.
But you know, maybe changing shape where that's like more solo than it is right now, and putting a lot of focus into a band, because I think that there's something so special about it not being all about me, like, about being, you know, like the community, the writing becomes different, the shows feel different, and I definitely think Brookelen is now feeling much more like a band, just having a full legitimized band. But I think a lot of me wanting to play in different bands is like, I want to be in a band, and now I'm in a bunch of bands, and it's great, and I'm just so passionate. I think it's hard for me to say no when something excites me. And
I'm the same way.
You know, I'm like, yes, I want to play.
I think it's wildly better to have that passion ooze out of you than have it diluted. I think you need to like claim it and like be okay with having it and being that passionate. It's a good thing.
I mean, I do think at the same time, when you put all of your focus into one thing, you can see a lot of results and growth from that. But it just depends on what the purpose is. And like for me, growing on bass and just wanting to play different genres, wanting to play with different people and learn how they write and stuff, and just like absorbing a lot of information at this time was the right thing for me. But I do think whenever I do get another job, I'm going to have to just like prioritize. But it's been so fun to be able to be like,
I'm playing a show tonight and tomorrow and the next day.
Yes, that's next week.
How have you played? How have you like managed all these stuff?
Meditating, drinking a lot of water, scheduling. I like next week we have 4 shows. I'm playing with Garb at Genghis Cohen on Tuesday. I think I'm playing with Laura Miriam at the Goldfish.
I promise I'll make one of these. I'm gonna write them all down.
At the Goldfish.
Wait, what was the first one? It was Garb on Tuesday.
Garb on Tuesday. Okay. At Genghis, I think.
Garb
and we're playing
Genghis
with
Cohen.
Farmer's Wife, who's a sick like kind of grungy rock band from Austin, Texas.
Sick.
And Jalen, the drummer, is also in Hysteria, so you see how these things are connecting. And then Lower Miriam's playing a show, I think, with Amelia Austin at the Goldfish on Tuesday or Wednesday. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday's the Hysteria show. First debut Hysteria show.
I'm writing all these down.
With After. And then I'm playing a Brookelen show on Friday.
Oh my God.
Again at Genghis Cohen. And I think that might be my last time playing at Genghis Cohen. I think I've overplayed that space. And there comes a time where it must end.
I just wrote all those down. I want to make one of them.
I'm sorry. I feel like it was just like a information projectile.
No, you're good. That's got to be like so much to manage. But like I said, like I think you're accumulating so many skills like from just doing that and wearing so many different hats. And you also like just, I think when it comes to performing, reps are such a huge thing where like you just get more comfortable to be yourself on stage the more that you're up there.
And I needed it. I really needed it. I think it was very scary for me originally stepping into, you know, I'd performed as a violinist for so long, or just like maybe in recording spaces, but really like playing live to a lot of people, getting familiar with that. And I think just letting go of this internal monologue that often spills of like, I can't do this, like, no, why are people here, why am I here, and just being like, well, why? It's the music is what's pulling you here. And you know, I feel like I finally got to this point where I like playing. I really enjoy playing. I'm able to play instead of think so much.
Yeah,
you know?
it's almost about getting to the place where like it is stream of consciousness, and you're able to kind of like remove yourself from the environment in a way, you know, where it's like the focus is not you, like, because obviously in your brain it's always going to be you. There's all these people staring at you and stuff, but I think if you can kind of begin to like think of it as less about you and more about like you are playing one half of this interaction, right? And the crowd's playing the other half, and you guys are just like exchanging with each other. I don't know. I feel like that tends to make it easier.
It's the tricky thing about control, where if you like hold on to it, you don't have control, and when you let go of it is when you are in control of yourself. And I think that that's a hard thing to reckon with in general, and just being able to surrender, especially like, I don't know about you, but 2025 has been one of the most insane, like intense years of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna ask you about it, because like your first couple months of the year, you said you got laid off, and then you played South by right after, and the fire, and then you put out a song that's doing pretty well.
Put out a song, the music, and
like how have, because it's kind of like the maybe not so much. I was gonna say it's kind of like the yin and the yang there, but I suppose there's been a couple bad things, maybe worse than good things.
I think you're right. I think it's just a lot of change. You know, the fires were very scary and hard, and I think just a reality, kind of a wake up call, just about how fragile life is, and you know how temporary things can be. And I think also. Like Pierce, you know, at our studio almost lost their house, and like he did have to evacuate. Like they were in an evacuation zone, they were okay, but just that first night, like Pierce came over to mine. He's like, I might lose everything in my studio. Like it might all be gone. And you know, people like Ari and like Andy, like really did lose stuff, and a lot of other musicians I know. And luckily, I think that there's been a lot of support and community care, even if it's more LA Central versus like just, you know, nationally, people helping. There's a lot of people being like, well, you know, rich people.
They were rich.
They're rich, so it's like,
it's okay.
Oh, the Eaton fires are like,
it's like working class communities.
But that, and then just like this current government. Yes, please. This current administration, just all of those emotions, very upsetting that Trump is back in office. We won't get political here, but you know, I lost my job. Okay. I lost my job because of these government cutbacks, and I think ultimately, like, it was hard because it gave me a lot of security, but I needed the push to like step into myself as an artist. And
interesting.
I don't know. It's just that constant pull between like wanting it's like you have to work. Like musicians can't just really do music right now, even if you're really, really successful and going on these huge tours. Some people in the pop space, but especially in like indie music and rock music, it's really hard to do it full time, and so it's almost inevitable you have to have another job, even if you're killing it, playing sold out shows, playing Coachella, like you still like need a job.
I know people who are playing like massive festivals that have day jobs. It's interesting. I think if you wallow in it for too long, it can begin to become very dwindling. I think I get in places sometimes where I wallow in it, and I can acknowledge like the just reality, unfortunately, that like there are very few people in this industry that make money, and the ones that do generally come from money, and
or have to like compromise something. And like I think exactly, like being grateful for where we are right now, like you guys having this such sick podcast / like just like artist discovery, like good conversations. I've loved like watching all of them
thank you so much.
You know, couple months. It's been really cool. And I think also just for me, like you know, I don't have management. I'm not making money from music. All my money goes to my bandmates or for recording and stuff, but I get to release whatever I want, whenever I want. Like I can work with friends as collaborators for visuals, and it's very much like a trading sort of a kind of relationship I have with a lot of people, where it's like, you know,
like nothing's off the table for you. You can do whatever you like.
And I think that meditating on those parts as opposed to the hopelessness that I think you can lead into, and just like, wow, like I'm making music with some of my favorite musicians and artists that are alive right now, and I live in Los Angeles, and I'm not, I'm okay.
Yeah, I think there is like a big subsection of people, and like I did this for very long. Like I think when I worked like a normal 9-to-5 job, I like really like almost like romanticized my life, where it was like, oh, like I'm gonna escape the 9-to-5, like I'm gonna get out, I'm gonna be the full-time artist. Yeah. And then you get there and you realize like, oh, like I'm making like very little money, and even if I was making a ton of money, like the day-to-day emotions that I feel are not changed because of the job that I do or do not work. It's simply dictative of like my personal life and like how I feel outside of that. It's like, I don't know, it can get strange with music because it's like something we all love so much, and like nobody goes into this, I think, unless like you have a wild attachment to this and you have such like a gigantic passion for this. I don't think you go into it unless, because there's no money in it. But at the same time, like when it becomes your career, how do you separate yourself from that and like make a normal life out of it? Like I've certainly had a lot of trouble with that. How has it been for you the past couple months, now not working a normal job and kind of just like doing music? Like has it been hard to like kind of figure out the balance?
I think it's like, I wish I could just do this right now, and it is, I think, because I know that this time is finite, and that I will have to work again. Novel. Yeah, I'm really using it. Like I'm, rehearsing every day with different projects, or trying to record, trying to get videos done and put out music. I think I'm really motivated to just release stuff, because I think holding on to stuff doesn't do any good, and sometimes people will hold on to something in hopes of maybe I can get this or this, and for me, I'm like just doing everything on my own with a lot of the projects. It's just like, I'm gonna put this out here and just keep making, and if people want to listen or care about it or connect, then we'll do that. But holding on, I don't think will do any good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Like I think there's something to be said about intentionality, but I also at the same time feel like a lot of artists get this this fear of perfectionism almost, where like they can just become perfectionists to the degree where nothing ever gets released, and it just sits on, like, bro, I have heard some of the most amazing songs of my life sitting on my friends' hard drives that I'm like, how the fuck is this not out?
I know.
Like I feel like I've experienced that a lot in my life doing what I do, and I understand it. I think like part of being an artist is almost being a perfectionist, I think sometimes, but I also think like sometimes part of being an artist is remaining intentional but letting go of the like,
gotta let it go,
like letting go of the perception of it,
Yeah, I think it's like I definitely lean towards wanting to be a perfectionist in a lot of capacities, and when I let go of that narrative, I'm able to create, I'm able to progress, and I'm able to like just come into myself, because I think when you're expecting to be perfect or like this needs to happen, it's like nothing happens because it's not possible. And there is so much beauty in like the imperfections and just living into that. It's
also about like acknowledging how subjective music really is. Like you can sit there and like, dude, like you can bounce a song and then listen to it in your car and then go listen to it in your headphones, and in one method you can hate it, and the other one you can absolutely love it.
Exactly. I have like an example of this with recording with Ryan Pauly for Lower Merion. We he has a very interesting recording style, but for this, basically, he showed me lyrics like the day of, and I was like trying to, remember the melodies, and basically we recorded like each song pretty much like one time, one through, and I was still not super familiar. I did kind of harmonies and background slash accompanying vocals to his, and he was like, yep, that's a take. And I was like, wait, I'm just like learning that. He's like, no, that's a take. And I actually loved it, and I loved how it came out, and I think I am not used to that with even like my background vocals and the garb stuff or my stuff. I will go over and over again and spend a lot of time doing that, and getting those type of insights from different artists and like producers is why I'm here. It's just like I do think that capture is powerful, and I've been lucky to like record violin, and so because he's a full-time producer on some of his other projects, and he has that ethos in the studio where he's very much like, I want to capture this moment, and like and then the moment's gone once you redo the moment 10 times. Like, you're right about that. And I think there is something to that, but it's always about the balance.
Yeah, there's something very real about like capturing the sound and the feeling of a room. Like I think like that. I mean that's why I love the live show so much. Like that's like my favorite thing about shows. I think is the fact that like they exist in that moment, just then, and will never exist again.
Yeah.
There's something so cool about that to me. Like you get to share that experience with a room full of other people, and you two are the only people who will ever know what that actually feels like.
And the true presence of the music being there versus yeah, it's so special.
It's just so different.
I know.
Yeah, there's something so like I don't know. Like I really feel like my connection to music comes from the live side. Like I think I feel the most connected to the live side. Being like kind of having this rough start to this year. Well, not rough start this year, but like having like
chaotic.
Yeah, chaotic, and like kind of balancing the yins and the yangs and stuff. Has it felt a lot different than last year? And if so, like being in this space where you're kind of learning how to balance like just being a full-time musician for a while, so with the knowledge that you'll have to go back to work eventually.
Yeah.
Has that like changed the way that you kind of schedule your day-to-day life? Like just waking up and stuff in the morning? Like are you looking at things differently than you think you were when you had a normal job?
It's interesting because this year is like the first year that I've really reliably been writing in my journal every morning.
Yeah.
And I think that really clears space to be creative. And at least I had a remote job before, but not having a job, I don't have that just like kind of pressure in my brain of like this back, like I need to check my phone, I need to do this. And so having freedom to just be like off my phone and like just being able to play a lot with different people and jamming. I mean, that's why I've been playing in different groups. It's because I'm just saying yes to opportunities and like enjoying playing with them. And I don't think that would be possible, because it's like pretty much 2 new projects started this year.
Yeah.
Kind of all at once. And then, like you mentioned, I went to South by and played bass for my Canadian friends, like kind of on a whim. And it was really fun. It was my first time like kind of touring. And we played in Little Rock. We played a festival there and then came back to LA after. And that was really cool. And I don't even know how I would have done that with my job. I was planning on taking off or whatever, I don't know, but it's just kind of like since the job loss happened, it's been nonstop in a really great way. But I am excited to kind of like slow down again. And I've got an EP coming up for my solo project that trying to figure out the release date. But like all, on the putting out music side.
Do you think it's changed the way that you are approaching creation? Like having that, like you kind of mentioned, like having that space in your brain that used to be occupied by like, I need to text, my people back from work or whatever. I got to hit my emails, whatever. Having that space kind of not being occupied by work stuff anymore, do you think it's allowed for you to be more creative in a different way? I mean, like I only ask because I think when I quit my job, like, it shifted my entire mindset like entirely, like in the fashion where like I think I had the space to approach things more intentionally, and I think I had the space to approach things like more calculated.
I think it's allowing me to play more, and this is also coming from I read this book by Victor Wooten, who's like a very famous bassist, and it's kind of a spiritual book about playing bass. Cool. But very much about playing versus practicing, like that mentality of like, okay, I'm sitting down and practicing, but actually like play, and what that word means and the connotations of playing and that part of creativity I think is important, because I think for a long time I was just like, all right, I need to practice this, or I need to like run through garb stuff, and then like no, like I can just play.
Put my hands in the bass and see what comes out.
And sometimes I'll play, and then instead of like feeling, practice, I'm tired, I'm done, I don't have any creative juice, I'm like, oh wait, I need to write a song right now. Yeah. And like, I'm gonna write this song. And I think my creative process for writing has evolved over the last couple of years, but I feel like I have a pretty good flow of it, just because I just give myself a lot of encouragement and like don't judge what comes out. And I used to do that a lot, where I'm like, this needs to be this way, or it needs to sound like this. And I don't even really think like my solo music has a particular place or sounds like something specific, even though obviously I have artists I love and have listened to and formed a lot of music relationships with those. But it's just like not judging myself and being like, this is okay because it's you. And that's that's good enough. Like, no one else has this opinion, so
and I think that's the only way to actually be, like, everybody tries to be unique, right? Like, we're all just trying to recreate something that, like, we've seen before, but we just don't know it. So it's like, I think the only way to actually, like, be unique is to lean into whatever naturally comes to your mind so hard that the accumulation of thoughts is something that only you could, like, arrive upon. It's so specific, you know?
I agree.
I think, like, following the intuition is something that's really, really huge when it comes to making music. I think a lot of people just sit there and, like, I don't know, like, feel the pressure from, like, whether it's, like, you know, social media, and, like, how they feel like they need to be like artists they've seen, or whether it's, like, a fear in their own brain, a failure or whatever. It's very rare that I think you can, like, truly be present enough to sit down and just feel where your hands and your thoughts are taking you.
Exactly. I mean, even, like, the last song I put out, Moon, there's like a 30-second orchestral, very, like, cello, violin, instrumental, and, you know, before I put it out, I was like, should I shorten it? Like, I don't know, like, is this too long for people, even though it's not long in retrospect?
Like,
but
I was gonna ask about it. It's like 4:03, right?
Yeah, it's a long song.
Yeah, it is a longer song, and I love how long it is. And you're right, there's so many different sections of it. There's like a chamber pop element to it. There's like a dream kind of pop,
really
a shoegazy
into chamber music right now.
Yeah, I love chamber music, me too. But I think, like, there's so many different sounds that are within it. It's cool to see the length, because I think that songs sometimes that, like, are that long, they definitely have a tendency to drag on. But I think something really cool about Moon is, like, it has so many of these different elements and sounds happening, where it's like it definitely feels fresh throughout the runtime. I was curious, like, having more, I guess I would say, like, singer-songwriter roots within your solo stuff. And then doing a song like this, where it's like it's kind of, you know, gears away from that pocket. It kind of embraces a lot of other sounds and stuff. Does the process from demo to master, like, is it different with a song like this than it is with previous ones? Because I would imagine that, like, this song couldn't have started fully singer-songwriter-y, or did it?
I mean, the song, it was, you know, I was in a tuning that I hadn't written a lot in at the time, and it was like 2 a.m. and I just was going through it. The song is very much about like loving yourself and healing from, like, dark spaces, and the whole EP, like the whole new EP, is very much about, it's like a healing EP, and the last one was more like, here's my pain, and then, like, this one's very much like, okay, like, we're rising above that. But it did come out on, like, acoustic guitar, and then I actually brought it in to the studio with Zach, who in Junior Varsity, who, like, also works with Hollis and stuff. And I have just been very nervous to, like, get into recording sessions with people, and that's why I do a lot of stuff by myself, or, you know, with my partner, just, like, having bad experiences in the past. But I was like, Zach is my friend and he makes great music, and I was just sitting there one day like, why have I not made a song with him? What am I doing? And I brought it in, and I love guitar and distortion, and that was very much, and you know, I think a lot of his drumming sensibility. So it was just like, I knew what I wanted when I wrote the song, but, like, going to the studio and just, like, verbalizing, it's like, oh, I want these distorted guitars. I want this, like, big building drum, you know, part. And I always try and fit in, like, cello and violin into the stuff too. So it's like, I kind of think about all that space once the general form is written.
Did you go in with, like, the full structure, and did you go in with, like, that break where kind of, like, the chamber stuff comes in? Yeah,
I think that I think it's interesting because I've been working with this cellist, Ben Kinzer, and he has a project called Ben Absent, and basically, like, traditionally I'll write a song, go into the studio, and do everything but the strings. Okay. And then the strings come in last, if that makes sense. Or, like, the violin and cello. And, we haven't had viola, but I did have harp on a song, which is really fun, on Maze, which was cool. And that
makes sense. There's like, there's something so cool about the song, like, 'cause I love a song that I think ends in an entirely different place than it begins. Like, in the runtime of that song is very much like, ooh, it's just like all over the place. But I think it's something that's really cool. There's a lot of like really interesting dynamics to it, you know? When did that one come out? And is that the first one on the newer project you were saying?
Yeah, so that one came out at the end of February, so it's been about a month.
Sorry, not like released. I meant like came out.
Oh, of me. Like,
yes.
I don't know, like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. I don't even know. Not too long ago. I mean, maybe you're like, oh, that's a long time. Maybe last year. I don't even. It's interesting because like I basically put out an EP, and I could have put out an album, but I was like, I don't really want to put out an album until I just have more of community and more growth because of just the costs and like logistics of an album. And so I kind of split an EP, like an album, into 2 EPs, and this is like the latter half. So some of them, they're all kind of mixed in, you know, like when they happened, I'm like, I don't know. But I do have 2 singles out for that, and then I'm gonna put out one more single hopefully next month, and then roll out the EP in like May.
Is that a lot of, like, I would imagine how much work that is, having nobody really on your team like that. Like you were mentioning, like you're kind of like self-managed, like not signed. Going into like releasing a project like that, it's cool that you have that much intention where you're like splitting something in half and you're like, all right, like the album felt too expensive and too long, so we're doing this. Like, it's cool to have that intention. Are you, I mean, you mentioned to me that like you went to school for music business.
Yeah.
Do you use a lot of the knowledge and stuff that you think you learned like within music school to like kind of gear your rollouts and like how you're going to structure your project and your releases?
Yeah, I mean, I also have having experience as like a day-to-day manager for a lot of other artists. I did pick up on a bunch of stuff there, and I think one of them being like, all right, there's a lot of issues with labels right now. They're kind of dying out. Like even the great indie labels, or like a place like Saddle Creek, which I'd love to put music on. It's like they don't, you know, maybe not having a lot of space to bring in artists.
Might be the first Saddle Creek mention on the podcast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
my legends, Bright Eyes.
Lonely Park Committee actually has like a double single off them. Like
oh,
one time,
that's crazy!
Which is really
I didn't know that.
I know. Jeff got that
that's
set up.
Crazy.
But anyway, it's like, I'm trying to see this as a positive thing, and it's like I have full control and ownership over all of my music, and you know, I work with producers who I'm friends with that we can, you know, make deals that feel fair for everyone, where they feel like they're getting something, and I'm like, yeah, I want to give you whatever because you know, you're helping me in this space. Where were we? The train.
Self-managed.
The train, yeah, self-managed. Yeah, so just like I switched to 2 Lost distribution on my own. I did have like an A&R reach out, but that helped me a lot because I was with TuneCore and they were really hard to work with. It's kind of like DistroKid, where it's just like
subscription-based model. There's like not a lot of like support.
Real people. Like I just want real people helping, and I think that was helpful. And you know, I do have people I can consult with. Like my roommate is effectively a manager, and you know, I'll just be like, hey, a great one. Yeah, she's working with great acts and doing a lot of cool stuff, and I'll just like run stuff by her. But I think also, you know, it's like some managers will be like, why are you playing so many shows? Like, you should be more strategic. And I was like, well, it is strategic for me because I'm wanting to get the band really great, and I'm wanting to get tour ready. Like I'm wanting to do these things, and the cost is low enough that it makes sense. But like, you know, it doesn't always make sense.
I feel like there's so many different ways to look at it, and it's so interesting how people in like different genres view the live side of things, because there's so many genres, like a lot of band-driven genres, and I'm sure you're aware of this, where like gigging is the whole thing, and it's so interesting to watch these like indie pop artists that are like so plugged into like the music industry, where it's like gigging is like a novelty to them. Like it's so vastly
a novelty with tracks.
But it's so vastly different than like the way that it's viewed in a lot of like DIY scenes. It's like it is the only thing in those scenes, and it's so strange that like I often think about the difference between like the music industry and music, and those are very different things. So different. Like the music industry is effectively taking like the most commodifiable approach to this, whereas like, you know, the music scene or whatever you want to call it, like, you know, there can be a variety of motives there. But I think like that's been something that's so strange to me growing up in like more DIY driven like band music scenes, is like realizing the difference in approach from a lot of people who are like in genres that more traditionally align with the music industry, the traditional music industry, is that like gigging to them can just be a novelty. Like it's just extra, it's like an extra thing, you know?
Yeah, and yeah, that's sometimes the whole point for some people. Yeah, I mean, I try and have. I think it's important to have people in music that aren't musicians that care about the music
100%.
and that want to support it with pure intentions, and having more women in those spaces too. And that to me is why like I can see myself having some contributing factor to it. Like if I could help my friends get on a label or go on a tour, or like I would in a heartbeat, because I love that music. And I think that that's kind of just where I am right now, like with my friends, or even like kind of joining forces with someone like Ryan and being like, oh, I want to put intention and time into this project and like do what we can, maybe, like, you know, to move it along, because it's great. And I think a lot of the people I collaborate with have no interest in doing any sort of I guess like promotion or whatever, but
see, that's kind of the drawback when you talk about like the DIY scene versus like the music industry. It's like there's 1,000% a balance to be struck, because if there is one thing that like, the traditional music industry has done, well, actually, I mean, I think there's a pretty cohesive argument to be made that major labels are terrible marketers, but at the same time, I think like at least the intention is there, and like the effort is often there in terms of like how much you're putting out, how much you're putting yourself out there, and like trying to market your music. That's very present within the traditional music industry. It's not very present within like more traditional DIY music scenes. It can be like less present, and it's also weird. I think this is probably less of a thing now, but I mean, there's certainly like a certain, I guess, image that you have in like some of these DIY spaces where like you are trying to actively gain success, and it's almost viewed as a negative thing, which can be really strange and just something I've never quite understood. I think there's a very, very important balance to be struck between like finding success and doing so while maintaining your creative, you know, your creative juice.
Exactly. And saying like the internet is a place to like just show your creativity, not like making content, but just like releasing your creative output and trying to reframe it too, and like recontextualize it, because I mean, I talk to bandmates all the time about this, or like I have a lot people, almost everyone that I'm making music with has their own project, or like is doing something else, and just like encouraging them to just show people it, just like let it go, because I needed someone to tell me that, and it took so long, and to have anyone like care in that capacity, I feel like just goes miles. And I don't know. And also because I think the music's awesome. Like with Pierce, I'm like, this is the greatest music in the world, just show them, put it out, you know? And he's been very hesitant to do that with some of his solo work and all of that, but it's out there now, you know?
You really just have to throw yourself at the wall. Like I think a lot of people, like, and I understand the fear of doing so, but
and it's weird, because it's like, I think when I first started releasing music, I'm like, is this gonna like do well? Is anyone gonna listen? And then when I stopped caring about that, like
things do better.
Yes, exactly, because I'm not focusing on that. I'm focusing on making music, on making the visuals, on playing shows. I don't have time to think about that. Like
it's so fucking weird to listen to like for my like I was talking to a friend recently, and he was telling me, so he played me his EP, and he was like, yeah, like a lot of these songs are trending in this direction because the label identified a trend within one of the songs in the last project, and that song, you know, did far better than the other songs, so we're catering the whole next EP to that sound. And it was so strange, because that was, in my opinion, the coolest song on the prior project. And it was so weird hearing somebody acknowledge and not realize the hypocrisy and saying something like, yeah, this was the best song, so it did the best, but the label didn't like it. Like, that's so crazy that like people can, I don't know, like I just it's wild to me that like there can be an industry that like can look at something and say, yeah, that's the most tasteful, that's the most interesting, but it might not be the commercial success, and it always is. They're always wrong.
I won't say who, but like I have a friend who signed to a label, and then like they were like, all right, you need to make an album. Made a whole album. They're like, this is the best stuff I've ever done. They're like, this is way too different from like what you did before. We want something like exactly like the last album. And they're like,
we don't want you to grow in any capacity.
So they're like, oh, okay. So they just like made something not heart, filled, and I'm like, all right, whatever, I'll do that. And glad I don't have to do that at the moment, because I do think I don't know if you're very much a seasoned songwriter and whatever, it could be a good exercise, but other than that, it's just like, what are we doing? What is the point? What is the point? I think when artists just like don't listen to that, but I know sometimes like they have to. It's like, this is a legal agreement I saw. I have to do this. Having like the big musical community you have around you right now, and it being in so many different pockets. Did you have a lot of that in DC, or do you feel like it expanded when you moved to LA? And what are the biggest differences between the music in both cities? For sure, it's interesting because growing up, I was a military brat, so I kind of moved around a lot, but then we settled like in in Arlington, which is, right by DC. And a lot of my guy friends in high school were in this rap collective. And so like some of my first experiences like in recording settings is like freestyling over like a dream pop beat that they made me, and that was very much that experience. And then just kind of being in orchestra and like, I'm like, but liking rock music. Like I was very much going to U Street Music Hall, which doesn't exist anymore, in the 930 Club, and I had like one or two friends that would go with me. Didn't really feel like I had a community as much. I mean, Richmond's like a really vibrant, awesome music city, and I've hence like connected with some really cool artists like in the DMV area, and there are some great artists, but I think primarily moved out here because I was looking for a producer. I was looking for a community, and especially moving around so much when I was younger, I was like, I'm ready to move somewhere else. And it's cool because actually like Riot Girl has like history in DC, and like bands like Fugazi, like they like there was like a a hardcore scene in like the 90s and a lot of cool stuff. But I haven't even really played too much in the DMV. I played a show in Maryland in December, which was really fun. And I opened for this guy, JD Pincus, who's like a legendary bassist and plays in like the Melvins and Butthole Surfers, is like his OG group. But that was really cool for me because like I grew up really liking the Melvins and being very much into like Nirvana and Mudhoney and that kind of space. So it's cool to see that connection. But I feel like I found more of a DIY scene like in South Carolina, and how long were you there for? Like 4 years, at school, and we'd put on shows for artists who were like a lot smaller at the time, like Indigo D'Souza, who are now big and like live in LA. Yeah, she's great. And like amazing. But that kind of stuff. And I definitely started getting out of my shell. I was just so scared to like make music with other people, and it was always a very solitary thing. And now like like fast forward, like I'm on the opposite. I think maybe it is overcompensation in some capacity, but it's also like such a gift. How'd you break out of that? Like how did you kind of get to a place where it became exciting rather than anxiety provoking to like approach people and ask to make music with them? Because I think a lot of artists like definitely struggle with that. Having positive experience, like I think it's like reinforcing it. Yeah, I think I had like a lot of negative experiences when I was first going into recording studios with like men I didn't know, and like feeling like impossible to like be vulnerable in those settings for myself. And then just like I think having encouragement from certain people, and just I just think it takes someone that is like, I hear you and I think you have something that you should share with the world. And just like those certain people in my life doing that. And even someone like I mentioned, like Ben Hahn, who was like one of the only artists I knew like in LA, just being like, you should come out to LA if like you want to build a community and just like start playing more and like be in the scene. And having that motivate, like I drove across the country in my car by myself, kind of on a whim, and couch surfed until I found a spot. Never left. I do like it here, and but I just kind of sent it and came out here, and I think just taking that leap of faith, like and but having some sort of sign, like some person carrying someone that you trust, being just like, you can do this. Because it's really hard to you know, motivate yourself to like step out of that sort of thinking where you're like, I'm not good enough, or like, I don't come from any. I think money was like really scary for me with music. I was like, it's so expensive to make music.
Yeah.
And
especially like not like have a large audience and make music.
Yeah.
That's a lot more expensive than having an audience.
Yeah, but you can work around it.
Of
and
course,
you know, I think like I've now can demo out a lot better, or just like, you know, find certain people and we can collaborate in a way. I'm planning on writing more with like the Brookelen members for the next stuff, at least for the like bass and drums. Like I want my drummer to write the drum parts. I want my bassist to write the bass lines, or I come up with something and help. But yeah, kind of leaning into that moving forward, because it has been very much of, you know, working with producers and having that set up. But also it's like Pierce is a multi-talented, multi-instrumentalist, and he's one of my favorite drummers and bass players. So it's like, I like when he plays drums on the tracks and bass a lot of times, you know. So
it is very, I think it can be understated how much one person believing in you can mean. I think having like one person who just wholeheartedly, like from the bottom of their hearts, like, I know that person will succeed no matter what. I think that's incredibly powerful. Like
it's everything.
That's like the craziest fuel I think that you can give somebody.
Yeah.
Is like them not wanting to let you down.
Yeah, and when I started like putting my band together for my solo project, it was a lot of people who cared about me and wanted to do it, but like I don't know how much they cared about the music. And I think when I kind of switched gears and was just like, I want to play with people who are excited about this, who like
this shit.
Like it changed the game for me. And I think also talking to people who had bands that I really liked, like my friends in Finished Postcard, I was like, how are you making this work? Because I know it's a duo project, but you have other members, and they're like, you need to be playing with the best players, like, and well, like also find a way for them to like care about it and like it, and that kind of helped me. And having just different artists kind of give me advice on like putting that sort of band together, and then sometimes bands form very organically, but at least with my solo project, it was like, it formed because I was struggling with like getting a band to really go out, and now it's a band.
Yeah.
So.
and sometimes I think like new players like approaching your music in a way that you did. Oh fuck. Thank you. Damn, I had like a muscle spasm. That was crazy.
Well, you got your cup filled.
Mario, can you pass me that towel right there? Thanks, bro. That was like, I don't know what I was doing there. I just like twitched hella hard. That was crazy.
It's steaming up in here.
Yeah. What I was saying though, I think like sometimes having a new player, like, cause I've noticed this in like a lot of bands that I love that like are around for like years and years and years at a time.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll hit a wall or whatever, and then they'll switch a member, and the entire dynamic will just like fully switch, and things feel so different. I think sometimes when you approach like songs that have been written and been done, and a new player playing them, whether it's just like the way they change them dynamically, or like it can be something as small as a new fill, or like whatever, one different chord in the progression or something, but it's like it just can breathe new life into songs, I think.
No, 100%. The last show I played at the Smell with Brookelen, we played with Fat Evil Children.
Oh my god.
And Bonsai as well, so brilliant. And
if I might glaze Fat Evil Children more than anybody else. Yeah.
It was really great getting to see them with like full attention, because I think I'd just like passively watched before, and
they're some of the best.
It was awesome. But I have a new guitarist, Nav, and they that was their first show playing with the group, and for me, I've been missing that second guitarist for a while, because Pierce played guitar, and then it was very much like, oh, you need to focus on all the billion things you're doing, and I need to focus on all my things, and we are crossing over too much. And I found them by just kind of putting myself out there. I played bass at this like Velvet Underground cover show with my friend Marina and their friends, and introduced me, and they were like, I'm looking for a band, and like I'm really into slowcore music, and I just graduated, and I was like, it's just, again, the same thing with Jacob. It's like, that's crazy, because I need a lead guitarist to come and join the project.
This is a funny like comparison, but your mindset on this really reminds me of my friend Timmy Skelly.
Yeah.
He grew up like playing, like not grew up playing, but he's 28 now, and he's moved here when he was like 20, or like maybe a little older than that, maybe like 21, 22, whatever. But he's been playing music for like 13 years, and he like probably played like 15 different bar residencies in LA over the course of like 7 years, played thousands of shows at like every dive bar in the city, and like every venue a million times, opening for whoever, like just playing anything that he possibly could. And he's really having like a really cool moment right now. Like he's on Wasserman and he's touring with like Evan Honer, and like he's opening for a bunch of crazy acts and playing a bunch of festivals now. Like, he's really having his moment, and it's very like incredibly inspiring to see, because I think like watching something like that come around when there were that many people who have been that invested in it for so long but just couldn't do anything for it. It's you just it's almost like it almost feels counterculture to build community, and I think that's something I think about a lot. I think LA and a lot of the mentality in this city in certain sections can be very based on like elitism and very based
spot on that.
And gatekeeping maybe is like another word you could use, but just like never acknowledging that you're a fan of somebody. And I think actually being like the polar opposite of that and being like as much of a fan as you possibly can of everybody you fuck with 24/7 365, eventually you'll just reach this place of like pinnacle, I think, because your community has just grown to be so big, and
it's surrounded on truth. Like, you know, you're not going up to people and saying something you don't feel. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. If you don't mean it, or you don't want to, you didn't like the set, don't say that.
Don't say it.
But if you want to,
don't be a dick. Just don't say it.
No, exactly. And I think when I am moved, like I do want to go up and say something or have connection. And you know, I've met so many musicians through just being like, that was awesome.
And here's what I love about it.
And oftentimes they're like, well, my band just like broke up and I'm looking to drum in a band, and like that happens that way. But like I mentioned before too, I think with creating with women here in LA, it can seem like we're all like pitted against each other, when really it's like no, I'm incredibly inspired by my friends that are making music here, and it's also great to consider them friends. And but I think having to be intentional about like setting those spaces up and making sure like, no, hey, this isn't a competition, we are trying to like bring each other up and be together. And I love that aspect about it. But it's easy to, I guess, especially on the internet, to not feel that way, or to be like, this person has so much more support. The whole thing is everyone's path is different.
100%.
Everyone's path is different. And so I could be like, well, I don't have management or like whatever. It's like, okay, like I started in a very different space, and it took me a long time to know that I wanted to, you know, pursue this with full force. I just had a lot of hesitation, and now I'm doing that, and like it's awesome.
I think defining success for yourself is kind of a superpower. I think like for a long time I very much like had a very like very carved out definition of success. It was these specific things in these specific ways and like these specific milestones, and like if I didn't get there, I was never successful. And then I think like kind of taking a step back and redefining that for myself a little bit, I think it's been very, very helpful. And I think it can get scary. I don't know. Like, I got in this headspace a little bit last night. Like I think it's really easy to like grasp that financial aspect we were just talking about. Where it's like, fuck, man, like very few people make money in this music industry. It's incredibly top heavy. Like you have to be like I mean, fuck, like the upper echelon of like artists. You got to be the upper echelon of like artists who have found success, who are also popular, who also have found a business model, who also have like a good, you know, fortunate label. Like it's such a small percentage of people who really find a way to make a living off this, that I think if that's your definition of success, you're setting yourself up for failure. And I also think like if your definition of success is financial in the first place, you're in it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And you'll never last long enough to like make this a reality.
No.
So I think redefining things in terms of success is like huge, and like figuring out
100%.
what that means for you. And it doesn't have to be something massive, you know?
No, and it can be just a concept, or like being, for me, like one of the things right now is just like being proud of what I'm putting out, like loving what I'm putting out, which I'm doing right now, which kind of for the first time, which feels really great. And I think I've grown in that space by just, I don't know, I think it's really easy to self-critique, or like you make something and then you grow into a new version of yourself and you're like, I'm not this person anymore, I don't relate to this. And it's like, yeah, but that's a timestamp and you can release it. But it feels, at least for me, like it feels really good right now to be putting out music that I do still feel very connected to. And I'm like, also, even if I've grown out of this, it's like I love it, and being able to do that. And that's one thing for me right now, which is awesome. And I think also the community part, it's really something I've been emphasizing as what I want and as like what success is to me. And that feels really great to be aligned with that, you know. It's
also a flash in the pan, like having old stuff out. It's kind of what you said, like it's almost like a time capsule of you at a different point. It's interesting because like I totally understand the like industry reason or whatever to like, or like the branding reason or whatever to like take old songs down and stuff. But bro, as a fan, I am obsessed with like going back and like finding like the deep cuts of like artists that I love, you know, shit they put out when they were 17. I think that's so cool. Or
like my least favorite song that I have out like is one of my friend's favorite songs. I'm like, I would never take that down. That's for you. That's for you, even though maybe it's not for me anymore.
Do you remember it's cool, like you mentioned that you for a long time were incredibly anxious to play shows, and then also that it was difficult for you to go up and like start to grow a musical community. And it seems really sick because that's like two things that you obviously have like really grown to like conquer. When you were doing both those things, like were you consciously doing it because they were fears of yours? Like were you just, or were they things that you just had to get over? I really think there's a lot of value in that for people.
I think so much of it was just self-discovery too, and figuring out like what I wanted and like, can I even do this? Or like, I think a big thing was like, if I don't try, like I'll never know how it feels. And
which is terrifying.
Jumping into the deep end and just letting go of the control to like gain it, which is like that circling back to that concept of just that. And it can be very humbling, and but the growth that happens is so quick when you're putting yourself in like out of your comfort zone, because there's a reason why you're pushing to it. And I think if you are resonating or wanting to be something, like the universe is also pulling you towards that, and they're like, yes, I want you to do this. And just looking at that growth from like a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago to where I am now, it might have seemed impossible at that time to actually be doing the things that are happening right now.
And it's also like comparing your story only to the story that you know fully, which is yours. Like I think like it's very easy to say like, why am I not X artist or Y artist? And then you are realizing you're like, okay, like in your brain, you have a very, very, very small understanding of this artist's track record, the success they found, how they got there. And it's like comparing apples to oranges. It's like, it's kind of like, I always talk about how dumb the best new artist category is at the Grammy. Or the Grammys, because it's always like artists that have been doing this for like
Charlie XCX.
Like,
you,
or like Chapel.
I know.
Like 10 years.
I really like reading music autobiographies though, because I kind of get this opening of, every person's story is different. But even some of my inspirations are like, Kim Gordon didn't know how to play bass when she started in Sonic Youth, and to me that was so affirming to me, like, oh, I literally can do this. Or like but I think especially being inspired by a lot of solo artists who have kind of done it themselves and seeing how that's happened and the difficulties that they've had. It can be reassuring also though. It's a long path, and it's a lifetime,
I think like learning by fucking up is a very underrated thing. I think like actually, it's weird. Like, I think like fear of failure can simultaneously drive you and also keep you from doing nothing ever. Like, I think you need to accept the fact like you're going to fuck up a lot. Like, you're gonna fail a lot and you're gonna suck at things, and like there's something really beautiful about that. Like, I think being open to like being terrible at shit and like figuring out, okay, like this is what I'm bad at, this is why it's hard for me, these are maybe like the insecurities within me that I have to address to get over these things and acquire this skill. There's something like so rewarding about that process. And like you almost learn more from like getting good than actually being good.
Yeah, I know. And I think people can hit plateaus when they feel like they're in that space. And for me, I'm in a really discovery oriented space and a learning and growing and fucking up space. Even just
so sick,
you know, like writing in a different genre, like writing and trying to figure out how to do that, or you know, playing bass in a different capacity than I have before. And it's a lot of trial and error. I mean like, and I think like, at least for me, in terms of like being an indie rock head since I was little, it's like I realized how male dominated like my music experience had been just listening. And so now I'm very actively like really just get excited about like women in music, which I think is fine. But yeah, and just like carving out those spaces and seeing those spaces for the first time, or even just like, you know, I grew up very much like I was kind of mentioning, just in this like male rock like listening experience, or you know, like the Arctic Monkeys in 5th grade were like my first band that I was like, this is so cool, like I love them. And then kind of like getting my own consciousness and like finding music, not just because I was like OG Spotify member, like and I realized I think that has had an effect on my listening experience, or like my discovery experience of just, I was kind of pushed a lot of like indie pop, I think too, and even just like, you know, the hits of certain genres and spaces. So coming into my own and like finding new music, or like old music that I really like. And even does a lot of your A&Ring and discovery happen in shows? A lot of mine does. And I also just, you know, I am a Spotify user, and I love to like find new. I used to do like what is it, like the Discover Weekly a lot, and look through all of that. But a lot of times now it's like, if I like an artist, I'll look at fans also like this artist. And I discovered this like 90s artist who has a lot of string instruments, Lisa Germano, through just listening to Cat Power a lot. And what
Bass.
I knew he was gonna say that.
Bass.
No, that's super sick. All right, I think one of the last things I wanted to ask you, as you kind of move into this space where you're getting ready to put this project out, which I'm very excited for, by the way. I think Moon is like definitely one of my favorite songs from you. I'm excited to kind of like see more things in that lane, if it feels like that. What's like one message or one thing you'd want people to get from the project when it comes out? It's
called Going, Going, Gone, and I think it's about being able to leave a dark place and like reclaim yourself. And you know, Moon is very much anthemic of that healing space and acknowledging trauma, acknowledging hardship. I think the record covers like me trying to get sober. It covers abusive relationships, not necessarily my own, but just like familial. And it's been very healing for me to write and release. Like the next single coming out, Blur, is kind of my homage to like getting sober and stopping drinking, but also connected to like the messiness that relationships can be when you're an unhealed version of yourself. And you're I think you can be in a relationship and not fully healed, but you have to be very communicative, and like it has to be an active effort. And I think a lot of it's just like self-love and being like, it's okay that this is something I experience. It's okay that I was in this dark place, and that you can decide to step out of it. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. Brookelen, thank you very much. Thank you so much. This was so fun. It was a lot of fun. Studio's sick. Thank you. You like ooze authenticity in a really cool way, and I think it's sick that you put your best first foot forward in so many different things. And I think like
I wish more artists would care less about what people thought they were doing and just do what they love, which
Yeah.
I think is something I really admire about you. So I think it's really sick.
And the questions and just I feel like our general conversation today felt so good and
Thank
like
you.
definitely revitalizing for me
Hell
and
yeah.
encouraging.
Sweet. Hell
you
yeah,
guys are
that's
doing
great.
something special here, so
Thank you.
don't stop.
Yeah, we won't. We never will. Thank you, my friend.
Never.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Music matters.